Good morning, Matthew. Good morning, Matthew. Okay.
Oh, there we go. Okay. Sorry. That was it was
I can
only
see it.
me. It was only me that wasn't working.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Yeah, we're live.
Yeah, no,
We're
I,
doing
I'm
it.
I'm just saying it was hold on. Device. All right. I think we're good. Yeah, we should be good now. All right, let's get this. We got the music. Music is off, but I think you're able to talk here. Are you there?
Yeah, I'm here.
Technical
Yeah, can
difficulties.
you hear me?
It happens. Yeah. We're good. We are good.
Yeah.
Good morning or afternoon or whatever it is for. It's morning for you still, right?
Hey, it's 5 o'clock somewhere, man.
It
It matters.
definitely is 5 o'clock. It'd be somewhere in the middle of the Atlantic Ocean. It's 5 o'clock.
Yeah, that sounds about right.
So somebody's having a beer on a ship.
Some sailor somewhere. Yeah.
Exactly. All right.
Hey there, sailor.
All right. Um. You know it's right around the corner. Right?
I've heard that it's holiday season, but I didn't really understand.
Christmas, man. Next
Yeah.
week.
It's
We're
Jesus' birthday.
what do we got? One well, next. So we are so so next Sunday we I'm not going to be here, so we're not going to have a podcast. We're not going to do next Sunday, and I know we missed last Sunday because we had some. Josh wasn't able to be here, so
Yeah. I'm
um,
sorry,
the,
everyone.
the holiday season
I
is a wonderful thing.
yeah. I let everybody down.
Yeah, it's terrible. Can't believe you do this.
Just
Um,
like my dad said I would.
so Thursday of next week is Christmas. We will not have a podcast on the 21st, but we will be back on the 28th. I will be here. Will you
I
be
will be here
available?
as well.
Okay.
Yes, I will be available. And I will
Okay.
be out of school and should have more time available on my hands. I'm trying to like write down all these projects that I want to do in the month that I have
Don't have
off. I
school.
mean, technically I'm still working, but
I have less things that I'm responsible for during this time. Still a
I
lot,
I
just
gotta
less.
I gotta fix my garage. That's at the top of the list.
What'd you break your garage for?
Oh, I mean, it's broken. I didn't really do anything. So the radio signal for the opener,
Yeah.
basically anybody can open if it receives any signal, it just opens on its own randomly.
What's your address again?
Yeah, I turned it off. Yeah.
Where
Yeah.
was
But
where are you
but
again?
nice
Where?
but nice try.
Just here. Wait. Let me get a piece of paper. What was the street again? Um. Okay. So you got a. Well, I mean, that's just your garage door opener. It's not your garage isn't
Yeah.
broken.
Yeah, but I can't use my garage with any consistency, like unless I want to go around and open it, myself. So I haven't parked in the garage in probably like 4 months. Which I mean, first world problems at the end of the day, right?
No, believe it. You got to take and you got to put the cover on the car instead of parking in the garage.
Yeah.
It's terrible.
Yeah, it's
All that
it, it's
weather,
very upsetting.
all that
It's basically ruined my life is what
all
I'm
that
trying to say.
California weather is just
It,
decimating your vehicle right now.
yeah.
It's out there freezing, sitting there in the driveway looking at this nice warm garage, going,
Yeah.
Why is this guy
Yeah.
doing this to
And
me?"
then I can't do anything about it. It's just like, oh man.
So you're just gonna buy a new garage door opener, right?
Yeah. And then I got to install it.
Well, um, yeah. So wait, when are you officially done school?
My last final's on the 17th, so Wednesday.
Wednesday. Nice, nice.
Yeah.
So hopefully you passed all your classes.
Yeah, there's not much chance of me not passing my classes. It's just a question of what grade I want. I'm sitting right on the edge of an A in math, and then same thing in computer science. I pretty solid on the A in computer science. He grades weird. Like I don't know exactly how he does it.
What you just doing two classes?
No, so my classes, I took two online classes at community college, and those were done on the 10th. So,
Yeah, that's why
and
you weren't available last week
yeah,
because you
and yeah, I finished all
something about
my
finals.
California diversity requirements. So now I know how to, you know, um,
Nice.
now I understand diversity at a great depth.
It's awesome.
Yeah, it's it's very exciting.
As long as there's no inclusion or what is it? Diversity, DEI,
Diversity,
diversity,
equity, and inclusion.
equity. Yeah, as long as there's no equity and inclusion in that diversity, you're fine. You just can't do them all together, from my understanding.
Yeah, it's the
That's
three
bad.
together. That's the devil's triangle.
Exactly. Horrible things. Okay,
Yeah.
so let's jump into this. Where we were last week. So last week or not last week, the week before last, and the week before that, we were on Section 8. Section 8 is going to be I think we're going to get through the rest of it pretty quickly. But the first part of Section 8 is to be able to tax and spend money, essentially, right? So we had a pretty in depth conversation about those. And we do have some, you know, determine federal versus state taxes, borrow money based on GDP or revenue, limit spending based on national issues versus local. And there was, each of the three constitutions that we look at, the conservative, libertarian, and progressive, they each had their own way of sort of stating that the United States in general should, the federal government should only be spending money on things that are for the general welfare, that it shouldn't be towards certain groups, that everybody should benefit from the federal spending. If there's particular groups or particular things from that perspective, that should be the states or local, right? But the
That
question
is the general
is
consensus of those three constitutions. I would agree with that.
yeah, but the question is okay, well, if you do general welfare, so you have things like, a big one that just happened is farmer subsidies. I mean, I think there was just a thing about bailouts or subsidies given to farmers. Like I don't remember, was it to the tune of like 12 billion or something? Um,
I haven't been paying attention to the news,
yeah,
so
you and your school stuff. I mean,
yeah.
come on. But yeah, there was subsidies that were just given to farmers, and according to these constitutions that were made up here, basically you don't you don't get to do that because it has to benefit everybody. It has to be money that goes towards every a common goal or a quote unquote general welfare for all the people, not a particular group or individual. So, and I think that is going to be key when it comes to federal. And we talked about the difference between state, federal. The fact that the federal stuff, if you have if California is given a bunch of money, and Texas is given a bunch of money, Florida's given a bunch of money, New York's given a bunch of money, and it's going to all these other states, and it doesn't go to them, it doesn't benefit all of the whole country. Then how does that work? It's sort of like I think California contributes the most in taxes to the federal government. I want to say that
Yeah,
they're
I
at the
forget
top.
what the GDP of California is, but it's something like higher than the lowest 20 or 30 states or something like that. It's a lot.
Let's see. Just the state contribute the most and the least. Go say facts. 19 states sent more to the federal government than they received. Um, Federal to states, states to federal. Pennsylvania's up there. Wait a second. Okay, so these are the states up top that got more than they gave.
Lucky.
and then these are the states that paid more. So here's
Oh, Texas or New York paid more. Oh no, they didn't. I'm looking at that wrong.
no, New York did. New York paid more.
I was thinking New York paid more than California, but no,
Oh
that's
no,
wrong.
no, California's got everybody beat by a mile. Like
Yeah.
they're the amount that okay, so wait a second. The federal to states. So the federal,
Oh, received more.
they receive more than any other state, but they also contribute an exorbitant amount more, if that makes sense.
Well,
So it's
yeah,
sort
with
of if
income
you
tax and everything else, and yeah,
exactly.
but
So they're giving a crap ton, like almost $1 trillion. They're upwards of $800 billion that they're giving in taxes, and they get 276 back. So there's a difference there of somewhere around 500
I,
billion, which is interesting because if you look at that, if they're 500 billion, they contribute even after the money they get back. They still give more than any other state, if that makes sense.
yeah,
So even after they get the money back, they're still over and above any other state even contributes period to this. Well, the only one would be Texas. Texas is pretty close. So because I have a feeling California's yeah no they're still way above right there. If you take the 276 billion off their 500 billion, so they're still contributing more than any other state period, even after the money they get back. So
yeah,
then you look at something like Virginia here. So states to federal versus federal to states. So they receive 89 billion more than they contribute. So
mm,
Pennsylvania is another big one. Well, 25, only 25 billion. So from what I'm seeing here, in the difference of money between how much is contributed and what they get, Virginia is one of the bigger ones. 89 billion. Yeah. So Virginia receives the most money out of all the states, um, and this is 2024. Virginia received $89 billion from the federal government over what they paid, and that is, I believe, the most. Yep. Well, aside from California,
yeah. So
so it's kind of
what are we
crazy.
trying? I guess I'm trying to figure out what we're trying to tease out here. Like, what are?
Okay, so if we're looking at that, when we're talking about paying taxes and contributing to the overall, should states like I mean, depending on the reason that they're getting this money, comparatively, it's going to be different depending on the state because there's more people in some states more than others. But if you wanted to take, if you say you did something like a universal basic income,
Yeah,
the states are probably going to receive more from from that perspective. But then it goes to the person. I don't know if they count. Um, do they count the individual amount that each person gives? Like, okay,
yeah,
so when they say the state is receiving, so if you have a person that gives, you know, um, let's just say, $10,000 in taxes, and then they
hmm
receive if you did a universal basic income, and they received, you know, I don't know, let's just say $12,000 back from the federal government. I wonder if that counts towards the states if that person is in a particular state.
Well, I almost if you go UBI or then I almost think that you have to take the states out of it and then assume that that $12,000 is going to cover most of the services
Yeah.
that people would need and just say yeah hey here do with it what you will but uh you know try not to snort it up your nose right and then
well, and this is, so here's Alaska received the most per person from the federal government per person.
Uh-huh.
But see, I don't even know that that means that. Okay, well, they received this amount, and if you take the population, you divide it by this, this is what you get per person. But that doesn't mean that the
Yeah.
people actually got the money.
No. I mean, that could
Yeah,
have gone into some politician's pocket at the end of the day.
exactly.
And that's why I like the idea of UBI in that sense, because it's like I like the government bureaucracy and regulation that all that creates, and a level of obfuscation
Yeah,
of where the money goes. Who is actually benefiting from that $24,000 per person, and we don't know. And I think that's probably the biggest problem that we
yeah,
have right now.
yeah, and I think that that goes back to like putting this in the Constitution as far as the federal government and being and saying what they can spend money on, what they have the ability to spend money on. Hey, California is getting $276 billion back from the federal government. You contribute 800 billion. You know, like I think what was it, New York or I mean Texas was somewhere around 400, 500. I think it was 400,
Yeah,
400 billion. I
yeah,
mean,
and then they had a surplus of like 76 billion.
yeah, but I mean, California is contributing 800 billion, so they're double the closest. The next person, they're double the amount of money that they're giving, and they're getting 276 back, and Texas is getting 76 billion back, and Texas is like, hey, you know, I'm not even getting half of 276. Like,
Yeah,
I'm not getting back half as much as what California is. So, and that's one of those things where, and you have in Congress and in the House, whenever you have all of those line items, the negotiations between states. It's like, oh well, I want $500,000 for my pigeon. We talked about this for my pigeon farm
yeah,
in New York. So let me put a $500,000 line in for my pigeon farm from the government.
yeah,
And we don't want that.
yeah,
We don't want those line items that are going towards like, okay, well, who's getting that 500 grand? Some the politician's friend created a company or has created this research to research pigeons, and we need $500,000 to research pigeons. Is that for the general welfare, or should that be to the state? Like, and then we had the question also. Say the government, the federal government gets, they make 4 trillion, or I think it's between 4 and 5 trillion. So they got $5 trillion. If they spend, for the general welfare, if we get that down and it's only 3 trillion, they have a $2 trillion surplus. Where does that money go? Do they just keep the surplus and we just hold on to it for a rainy day when we have to go to war, we have some massive disaster? I think that should be, there should be some sort of reserve that is, hey, we should keep a certain percentage we should have a certain percentage of our GDP saved to spend whenever for emergencies. But does it go back to the states? For the state, like, people at the, from a perspective of us paying income tax, we get money back if we pay too much money in, right?
right.
You know, and that's just, which to me is, it doesn't make any sense. They're collecting all the data. They know the numbers. They know what everybody should be paying. There's no reason that we should get, it should be regulated during the year.
Well, yeah, with how intrusive things are getting technologically into our finances, yeah.
Yeah, they should.
I
They know. They know. It's just you have all these companies lobbying to make it difficult so that they can make more money off of us.
Yeah.
Sort of.
Well,
I
and
mean,
so the rich can pay accountants and lawyers to stay rich, and
yeah,
and then the average person can continue to pay their fair share.
yeah, yeah. So I mean, that's one of the things that I like. How trying to figure out how that money gets distributed. If we're talking about the general welfare and we eliminate all of the piecemeal stuff, once that gets implemented, there's going to have to be something that says, okay, well, what are we doing with the surplus? How does that work? Okay, say we, like I said, we have a $2 trillion surplus. If that happens, what happens to that 2 trillion? Okay, well, we save it in our coffers for a rainy day for emergency fund or whatever, because everybody says you should have so much for emergency fund, right?
Mm-hmm.
Um, and then, okay, well, if we have the emergency fund, if we have all the stipulations that we have, at that point, does it get refunded to the states? Like, okay, we have the emergency fund, we have $1 trillion. Does it split equally between the 50 states? Does it go based on how much each state is contributing? Does it, you know what I'm saying? Like,
Yeah. Or do you reinvest it in infrastructure, in industry, or
yeah,
uh, you know, I mean, do you? Yeah,
that's
I
a
don't.
tough one.
Yeah. And then the idea of the general welfare. Do you put it into research? Do you that that benefits the people? But then you run into the problem of, okay, well, we've socialized all this government research, and then we've privatized the profits from it. You know,
Exactly.
and so yeah, man, I, that's a tough one too. Um, and then you get into the idea of, and I know a lot of people have this opinion where if you do give it back to the people, are they going to spend it wisely? Are they going to invest it in themselves? Are they going to
But
you know? And
my thing about that is who are you to say what the money's spent on?
yeah,
I
I
mean,
don't
and
know.
that's
A lot like the I don't know if it's the general opinion, but I know a lot of people are of the opinion that, yeah, if I'm paying in and then it's getting going back to other people, yeah, I should have a say in that. Which I
so.
think, which I agree with you. I think is stupid.
Well, no, it's just one of those things. Okay, so you want somebody to tell you what you can, you want somebody to dictate what you can and cannot do with the money that you're given,
Yeah,
with your money that you're making. So
but
you
but
open
in
up the thing
government
of
bureaucracy, we do it constantly.
no,
Like you
no,
have to jump through all these different hoops to get unemployment and or whatever other services and
yeah, but if we get rid of that and we're doing a UBI,
yeah,
look, we have the current state of the way things are. People saying, hey, well, if if I'm paying these taxes and you're getting my tax money, then the government should be able to tell you what you can do with it. Okay, so you're saying that you're going to work, you're trading your time for a company paying you. They should be able to say what you can spend it on. Is that what I'm hearing? How is that any
yeah.
different? Well, the taxes were my money to begin with, were they? Was it?
Well, it's I mean, at the end of the day, economic wealth and economic growth, it's all circular. So yeah, I
Exactly.
get what you're.
Yeah. So I mean, you have representation as far as where the money is being spent. Like you have a representative that is going to vote on whether or not they want to fund cancer research. Okay. Well, you can say, well, I don't want to fund cancer research. Okay, cool. Go tell your representative that you don't want to fund cancer research. But if there's 15 or 30% of you that don't want to fund cancer research, but the other 70% do, guess what? You're out of luck. It's the same way with the local governments. You have a lot of retirees that are on a fixed income, and then they're living in this area and they don't want their taxes to go up. But then you have parents that are working that have their kids going to school and they're using the roads, they're using the services of the community, and they're like, no, we want to do this. Well, I don't want you taking any more of my money. I'm on a fixed income. Well, then move somewhere else. Move to a community of like-minded people that you don't have this problem, that you don't have a school in the area because it's a bunch of people that are retired and don't have kids anymore. Well, I've lived here
Yeah,
for 60 years. Okay, well, then you can't quite be mad at the fact that
there's a
like,
trade-off. Yeah,
yeah, that's what I'm saying. And that's That's the unfortunate part about this is as you go through life, when you're a kid, you're not sitting here thinking, "Oh gosh, I got to pay taxes, and my taxes are going to make the schools better and make the fire department, get them a new fire truck, get the police department to be able to patrol more, get them a new patrol car, get them, and all of this stuff." And don't get me wrong, you have the corruption that is widespread across the country, but it's it's one of those things that as you go through life, you have different priorities in your life. When you're a parent and you have your kids in school, you want the school to have money. You don't. You want them to be able to do the best job for your kids as you're growing up, right? You want them to learn. You want them to get a good education. So that's why you have some school districts that have a lot of money because those are the people that are, in that area and funding taxes, for the schools. And then, you have people that don't want that. Why do I got to pay a bunch of money to school? I don't have any kids in school. Well, then why are you in that area? Like,
Yeah, I feel like that's a problem though in my head because I don't have any kids in school right now, but I
yeah,
I would gladly pay more taxes
exactly.
to make schools better because I understand the good in it and that everyone should have the opportunity to learn and everyone should have the opportunity for higher education if they so choose.
Correct.
And they that there is and I think the problem is that people can't abstract. Like there is no looking outside of yourself and saying, "Hey, what's good for not just me and not just my family and not just the people that I know. What's good for everyone? What's good for most people?"
Well,
And I think therein lies the problem or the one of the problems with the human condition.
and that's. I'm glad you brought that up because the thing is the better the schools you have, the better the roads, the better the lighting on the roads, the better your community is overall. You're going to benefit from that. You're going to benefit from having good sidewalks that you can walk down to the corner or, lit sidewalks so you can take walks at night and not be, scared or afraid somebody's, driving by is going to hit you. But having the lit areas, having that infrastructure, having the better schools, which is going to mean it's going to attract better and brighter people, which means you're going to have a better overall community. Like that's what's hard for some people to understand, and this goes back to a lot of stuff. If you build the better community, if you invest in your community, in your infrastructure, in those things that improve the quality of living for everyone around you, your quality of living goes up.
Yeah. Yeah, we all rise together. I think that's the part that people don't understand,
Well,
or that they just don't grasp.
there you go. I don't want to say that they don't understand it. I don't even think it's but it's my money. It's mine.
Yeah,
Nobody else should get it.
There- there's a layer of abstraction there that I don't think a lot of people ever reach.
Yeah. Anyways, I digress. I mean that's a big conversation that we've talked about a lot, but we need to get on. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to derail us for 40 minutes.
But you did.
I 100% did. I was like, the first thing we're going to talk about is something that we've rehashed multiple times already.
Yes, and I feel like the money thing. I feel like we've beaten that horse is dead. Like I mean, like
Well,
we
we
should have
talked
buried it a couple weeks ago.
we talked about it, but we don't have a solution.
No,
And both of us coming from an IT background, it's not the easiest thing to move on from when you don't have a solution to the problem.
or a root cause.
I don't know that you I don't know that we'll ever have a like a
A,
I
a
don't know
base
that you
case.
can make a solution like an actual solution to that problem. because it's all going to depend on people. I don't think you
Yeah,
can put enough guardrails. I don't know if you can lay the foundation to where people aren't going to come in and screw it up.
yeah. I I wonder if they're no, because everybody's just so different. I like, we have all these similarities, but we have all these differences too, right? I mean, it's part of what makes life incredibly interesting, I think. But at the same time, when you're trying to come up with a solution, or like I said, a base case to say, oh, okay, hey, this works at a small level, and so now let's expand it and and apply it to everyone. It doesn't work because there there's so many groups of different base cases. Like that, all these competing interests and priorities, and uh, you know, and just ideas too. It's uh, it's a little, what's the word I'm looking for? It's mind-boggling to think about how do you solve that problem for everyone, or at least most people, I guess. It's overwhelming, is is what I
Yeah,
was trying to think
no,
of.
it is terrible. I'm going to. I saw this quote from Kurt Vonnegut, and it's so good. It's really interesting. I don't know if you've ever read this before. I saw this over this past week, and he told his wife, he's like, "Hey, I'm going to go buy an envelope, right? Let me zoom in. Oh my goodness, come on." So he's like, "Hey, I'm going to go buy an envelope," and she says, "Well, you're not a poor man, you know. Why don't you just go online and buy 100 envelopes and put them in the closet?" He pretends. So I pretend not to hear, and I go out and get an envelope because I'm going to have a hell of a good time in the process of buying one envelope. I meet a lot of people. I see some great looking babes. A fire engine goes by. I give them a thumbs up. I ask them, well, what kind of dog is that? And I don't know. The moral of the story is we're here on earth to fart around. And of course, the computers will do us out of that. And what the computer people don't realize or they don't care is we're dancing animals. Like
Hmm.
but it's true. Like it's so much easier to just, hey, I need this. Let me go on online and I need groceries. Let me order online and have them delivered to my door. I don't have to talk to no one. I don't have to interact with anyone. I don't have to go out and see my community and talk to people. I don't have to do anything. And there's nothing wrong with that. If that is what you want to do, by all means. There's some people that can't for obvious reasons, whether it's a handicap or something of that nature. But also, it's good to get out because humans, we're social creatures, right? We are naturally social creatures. Um, and it's good to see, to get out, smell the air. Whether that's good or bad, nice smoggy
Yeah.
air but it's good to get out. It's good to see people. It's good to experience the life that's around us. And that is what communities are about. If you got to go buy an envelope, okay, well, let me go get in my car. Let me sit in traffic for the next 30 minutes trying to get to the post office. Let me get to the post office. Let me deal with these grumpy people that are in line and they're, having the worst day. You know, doing that is not, people aren't going to enjoy that. But being able to, if you're part of a community, got puppy stream going on here.
Yeah.
And
He's
but
coming.
if you have the ability, if you're in a community to where you can get out, you can walk down the street because you have sidewalks. You can, go down to the local post office. You can, see people along your way, see your neighbors, and have that community. That makes a big difference. I think that,
Yeah.
versus the 20, 30-minute drive and traffic, sitting at lights and people road raging and trying to get wherever, versus taking a walk down a sidewalk to your local post office. Like there's there's something to that.
Yeah.
But
Yeah, we definitely lost something, like,
oh yeah,
with the way that we do transit and all that different stuff. That's for sure.
yeah.
100%. Uh,
So, but I mean, even like for the common good, or the general welfare, creating high speed rail across the country to connect our country back and forth. Even just a high speed rail from like on the Eastern Corridor from, Boston to New York to Philly, down to Philly, Baltimore, D.C., down, if you want to go down to Richmond and, on that, just having something that to be able to get people back and forth to alleviate some of the traffic congestion, you know?
yeah.
I
Well,
mean,
I
even
mean, I know
something
in
as simple as
California
that.
we're doing a great job on that high speed rail, man. We're 20 years in, and it is looking great.
you, you know what was really interesting was when I think it was Elon Musk. He was doing the Boring Company. He was creating the tunnels underneath California. I don't know if it was San Francisco or wherever. He's like,
Okay.
yeah, we could dig down in the ground and we could have transportation underground to move people. And someone was like, so like a subway. So like this thing that they do in multiple countries all over the world in great amount. Like I don't. It's not. These are not new ideas, folks.
Yeah.
Um. Okay.
But give him that $1 trillion, man. He deserves it.
Yeah. Exactly. All them great ideas. Okay. So we need. Let's move on here. Now that we're almost an hour in. Um. So we stopped on to borrow money on the credit of the United States, which obviously they should be able to. The United States should be able to borrow money. The amount that should be borrowed. That is the question. Borrow money based on GDP or revenue. Limit that amount of money that's being able to be borrowed. But where we stopped last or the week before last was to regulate commerce with foreign nations and among the several states and with the Indian tribes. Now, to regulate commerce with foreign nations among the several states and with Indian tribes. So this gives Congress the power to regulate trade. I mean, I don't see a problem with this. I think that Congress should have that power.
No. Yeah, I agree.
I don't think anything needs to be changed from that perspective.
Mm-mm.
Okay, to establish a uniform rule of naturalization and a uniform laws on the subject of bankruptcies throughout the United States. I don't. That's interesting that they put these two together: naturalization and bankruptcies.
Yeah. They definitely don't seem like they go together.
Hmm. Yeah. If we go to
You go into one of the other constitutions, see
well,
what they
I
did.
want. Yeah, I wanted to see. So, and this is something that. Okay, so the conservative constitution created two sections just about money. And this is how important what we were talking about before, how important this part of Congress's power is. It's so important that the conservative constitution created two new sections in the constitution just about collecting taxes and spending taxes, and then the board of treasury essentially. Like, so they took those two lines, the two lines that are in the Constitution, the first two, and they created two new sections out of those. I mean, that's how important the whole money collecting and spending is to how much of a difference there was. Um, so yeah, So if you look at the Progressive Constitution, they added this line to legislate for the general welfare insofar as such action is necessary to address problems that are national in scope and are unlikely to be addressed adequately by state or local governments. We talked about that. That's the one where in national things to regulate commerce with foreign and native nations and among the several states. With okay, so this is what the Progressive Constitution they changed with foreign and native nations versus foreign nations and with Indian tribes. So they took foreign and native nations and they put them together and among the several states. Okay? The Libertarian Constitution, they added a large to regulate commerce with foreign nations and among the several states and with the Indian tribes, provided that this provision shall not authorize regulation or prohibition of any non commercial activity, or if any commercial activity that is confined within a single state, regardless of its effects outside the state. But Congress shall have the power to regulate harmful emissions between one state and another, regardless of its source. So, this is the libertarian view. I don't know how familiar you are with libertarianism, but it is a big thing for them to where you have the freedom to do whatever you want to do as long as it doesn't infringe on other people's freedoms, right? That is a big part of libertarian mindset. So that is why they, provided this provision shall not authorize regulation or prohibition of any non-commercial activity. So as long as you're doing something that is non-commercial, Congress can't prohibit it. So I'm sure that they've used the regulate commerce to do something of that nature, or of any commercial activity that is confined within a single state, regardless of its effects outside the state. So this it basically gives protections to the small business owners that, hey, if you're doing business just within that state, how does Congress have a say in what you're doing?
Right.
It should be the local government. It should be local state governments that have
Or
the ability
state.
to regulate what's going on in their state. And then, but they should have the power to regulate harmful emissions. See, and this is something that, because this is one of the things that always, from a libertarian perspective, this is always one of the big questions, right? If I have my land and I'm farming on my land and I'm getting water out of a stream that runs either through or next to my land, and somebody owns land upstream and they dump stuff in that stream, and then now I'm getting polluted water out of the stream that I was using, how do you know what I mean? Like, how do I
Well,
get,
I like even if you think about it, like yeah, pollution too, but like if you if somebody takes more water out of it upstream, then
and you don't have
and you
water?
yeah, and you don't have water,
Exactly. So,
which is a huge thing in California.
big thing in California. I mean, all they got to do is just turn that faucet on up in the north side of the
Right.
state. That's
Yeah.
what they did earlier this year.
Exactly.
They just turned the faucet on and then everybody had water. So it's fine. There's somebody up there that they got this faucet that holds all the water back from the entire state, and they just turn it on and off or whatever, and it
Yeah.
works.
That's the technical explanation.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Yeah. I don't. There's plenty of water in the north part of the state, and they're making the south part of the state suffer because they don't want to give any of their water to them. Pretty
Yeah.
sure that's what it was, right?
Well, a lot of it right now is that they're dumping a bunch of it down into the San Francisco Bay to save an endangered fish.
Nice,
So there's that too. Yeah.
nice.
But yeah, and then there's never enough water for everybody.
Yeah. So, so that's one of those things that says Congress shall have the power to regulate harmful emissions between one state and another, regardless of its source. But they're just saying emissions. So they're specifically pointing out emissions, and this is the whole EPA thing. So if Congress has the power to regulate harmful emissions, and then they say we're going to create a we're going to create the EPA to regulate this, and it's and under the president's directive to make sure that this gets done because they execute the laws. How is that different than what we have now?
Yeah, it's not.
But you got to call this out in the Constitution. You can regulate. Congress does have the ability to regulate harmful emissions, but nothing else. So that's
Yeah,
a
it does create an exclusion. That's for sure.
yeah. That's something that okay. We changed the Commerce Clause to allow regulation only of actually interstate actual commerce, unlike today's legal precedent, which allows the federal government to control over non commercial activity and activities that take place wholly within one state, on the theory that these activities somehow affect the nation's economy. But we do allow for regulation of interstate pollution.
Hmm.
Um, okay, so if the pollution stays wholly within the one state, then the federal government shouldn't have a right to do anything about it, as long as
I
it stays
I
within your
wonder
state.
I wonder if some of that has to do with drugs too. Like where if as long as you don't traffic across the state and it's legal in that state, the federal government can't do anything about it.
Unlike today's legal precedent, which allows the federal government to control over non commercial activity like the use of drugs.
Yeah.
It's a non commercial activity. Me using drugs is not a commercial activity.
No.
Huh. That could be. I mean, I don't know the legal precedents that the Commerce Clause allows that. Let's see what the okay. This is what the conservative one has: to regulate and promote commerce with foreign nations and among several states and with the native tribes, and to regulate the production and sale of goods and services in national markets. Well, that's interesting. That's a tough one. In national markets. You know what I mean? Like I don't under
Yeah. Hmm.
commerce power is revised to accommodate some modern doctrine, but also to strengthen state power somewhat, and now provides Congress has the power to regulate and promote commerce with foreign nations, among the several native tribes, sale of goods and services in the market. Okay, okay, they don't say why.
Yeah.
Okay, yeah, they
Which
don't
and
say why. They're
all this is kind of interesting in the sense of right now we have foreign trade policy being regulated through executive power and it
so
uh,
they're using one of the acts that Congress put through to try to say that the president that Congress gave the president that power in times of emergency or times of whatever, and they're trying to say that this is one of those times that we're in a state of emergency or state of whatever, and the Congress has given the president that power. That's essentially what it is. So there's a lot of
well
because
and
what it was supposed to be is if we're in a time of war, instead of waiting for Congress to have to vote on whether or not we should, increase tariffs or not allow trade or whatever, the president has the ability to say, hey, we're not going to trade with this country anymore because of, this is a wartime effort or what. There are certain circumstances that allow the president
sure.
that type of power. And it's just being interpreted now as, well, he has that power now because of whatever they want. Yeah,
Yeah.
it's the
Well,
unfortunate part.
and it's the idea that you put this rule in place for good reason and good measure, and assuming that people would act with discretion, about when it should be used, or that you'd be dealing with sane and rational people, and
Yeah,
we're not.
exactly. That's where a lot of this, putting these guardrails comes in, is because, hey, we got to make sure people aren't going to take advantage of this. So the whole
Yeah.
commerce thing is like regulating the commerce. I can understand the repercussions of that, but I don't know that we need like if we're talking like the way the libertarian one. I
Yeah,
don't.
it's interesting to think about what they're actually trying to accomplish. Like, what by changing this language, what are you at? What do you think you're actually improving, or or making better, or making more safe, or whatever? And
It
I don't know.
Yeah.
I don't. I don't know if that necessarily does. At least in my mind, I don't think it does. I,
It essentially allows, okay, so if any commercial activity is confined within a single state, regardless of effects outside the state, shall not authorize. So a state can legalize recreational marijuana. And they're saying the federal government, as long as it stays within the state, doesn't have the ability to come in and say you can't do that.
yeah, like
Essentially,
when
states' rights supersede federal rights.
yeah. Yeah, like when
That's
the DEA goes up to Humboldt County and burns down all their marijuana farms. You know.
exactly. So you can't do that because it's the state has legalized it. You can't have an overarching thing to regulate commerce from the perspective of, if we're doing something in our state that is legal in the state, you can't say, well, the federal government doesn't allow this, so we're going to come in and say you can't do it, even though you've legalized it there. Which I get that.
Yeah, it's an interesting idea for sure.
Well, I
But
mean,
but then again, it's like if federally and as a nation we've created a law that says, hey, this drug is illegal, and then you have a state that says no, by our state constitution it isn't. The the U.S. Constitution is supposed to when it gets specific like that. Well, U.S. law is supposed to supersede state law when they specifically contradict.
supposedly, yes, because
So,
one state commerce, right? So one state, hey, slavery's legal. You
right
can buy and sell people. If we
there,
say it's
that's a good
legal in our
example.
state,
Yeah, yeah, well, yeah. We're not trafficking these people outside the state, so
correct. It's all staying
it's
in.
fine. Yeah,
It's commerce, so you can't prohibit.
yeah. That's a
You
slippery
can't.
slope.
Yeah, you can't prohibit any commercial activity confined within a single state, regardless of its effects outside of the state. I mean, that's pretty significant.
Yeah, it's a nuclear example, um, but I think the argument for not doing that kind of holds, it holds some water.
I think that it needs to be changed a little bit.
Or does it even need to be there in the first place? Uh,
Well, that's that whole legal precedence about commerce. So I don't think it's good that the DEA can come in and burn down, crops
agreed.
and plants, somebody that has marijuana, but does the federal government have the right to come in and say, "Hey, you can't buy and sell people"?
Right.
I mean, they're both commercial
I mean,
activity.
I get, yeah, and I guess you would cover that in another part of the Constitution, like you are where
The slavery amendment.
everybody has the right to life, liberty, and pursuit of happiness, and all that happy shit. And so does it matter at that point?
Well, I mean, again, it's you're saying any commercial activity that is confined within a single state, regardless of
Yeah,
its effects outside the state. So you're giving a blanket. but it's one of those things of how does the how do you supersede one? Like, does the
Yeah.
Constitution that says
You're
everybody has the right to life, liberty, and happiness, and you can't infringe upon those rights, and then the state says, well, no, we can buy and sell people. Sorry about your luck. You
yeah,
know,
and human trafficking, I mean, I think most of us pretty much agree that that's not a great thing.
it's bad.
Um,
Well, okay,
I
but
mean,
here,
unless you have a counter argument that you like to present, you know.
okay, no, 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 prostitution,
um, I, and I guess when you think about it, that is commerce. Like
it's
you are
commerce.
buying, yeah, you are buying and selling at the end of the day.
Yeah, does the federal
But
government have the right to come into Las Vegas and take down the Bunny Ranch? Because the
yeah, if
government, the
you,
federal, in my opinion, the
yeah,
federal
because
government shouldn't.
whether you if prostitution is illegal, yeah.
That's
I
what I'm
mean,
saying. I don't think that there's a federal law against prostitution. I don't
I
think
don't
that.
think so either.
Yeah, I
I
think it's
think
all
that's all
local.
state
Yeah,
yeah, driven. Um, I
I
don't.
mean, it's going to be, alcohol. It's going to be your big one: alcohol, tobacco,
Well, it's
drugs.
behavior control
Yeah, exactly.
is what it is.
Yeah, that's
Like
and
I
that's
don't think that you should be able to to do this behavior,
correct.
which
This the state at the state level you can, but the federal government you should not be able to do that, right?
yeah,
And the big one is drugs, is marijuana, cocaine, schedule whatever the schedule is for the drugs,
Schedule
for
A.
this. Do what?
I think it's called Schedule A
Yeah,
drugs.
whatever it is, they're considered illegal. I mean, that was just a way for the government to make money back in the, what is it, 70s, 80s, I think is when it
Yeah.
all hit. It was back in
Well,
the 80s.
90s and 2000s with heroin too.
Yeah, well, I'm just saying they created all that stuff back in like the 80s, 70s,
Yeah.
80s, I believe. People were getting a little too wild out there in the 70s, peace, love, happiness, all that stuff. Too
Well,
much drug
and
use.
so
We got to
they
regulate
could
that.
criminalize behavior and dehumanize people for it, and then single out groups of people
This is true.
as well.
So I don't know that does there need to put some stipulations around what regulating commerce is? Because that's what the libertarian and the conservative one is doing. The regulation of production and sale of goods and services in national markets. I don't know what the hell that means. Like, regulate the production and sale of goods and services in national markets.
I think that's just
What are national markets?
I
What does
think
that
I
mean?
think I think that's interstate commerce. That's what I think of it as. Um, so any type of commerce that crosses state lines.
But isn't that to regulate and promote commerce with foreign nations and among the several states?
Yeah,
Okay, and to regulate production in national markets? Regulate the production and sale of goods and services. So the ability to regulate services in national markets. I don't know. I mean, if you're talking about a conservative perspective, the fact that they're giving them the ability to regulate services in national markets,
right.
that's
That's kind
that's
of
a little
wild.
overreach.
Yeah,
That's more government. You're asking for more
yeah,
politics. You're asking for
yeah.
more.
You're basically instantiating bureaucracies like the FCC, the SEC, um, within the Constitution.
I mean, don't get me wrong, but this could go really bad. And I understand. Okay, so in national markets, so we're talking phones, Verizon,
Yeah.
T-Mobile, all of that. You're
Oh, yeah.
talking internet providers. You're talking Like the ability to regulate goods and services in national markets. Okay, so the government now has the ability to regulate what Comcast or Spectrum or whatever what they can do.
Yeah. I
We
mean,
have
you
that
could go
with
so far as to say that the government says, well, you can pass this traffic, but you can't pass this traffic
exactly,
across.
exactly.
Yeah.
I mean,
And then you just cut off, and then you just killed the freedom of information.
correct, and that's one of the things that. But okay, but then you go the other direction. Well, if Congress doesn't have the power to regulate, those companies can regulate and do whatever they want.
So maybe it's the other direction. It's like it's a de like you got to go in the direction of deregulation, where it's like nobody can regulate things.
I see. I could do this if it had a stipulation on the end, but even with that stipulation, it can still be taken advantage of. If you could, if if you had something in here, Congress shall have the power to, and put a stipulation as long as it essentially as long as all decisions are made made towards the general welfare of the country. But then, even when you say the general welfare of the country, even if you say that, hey, we want, any regulation, any laws, any whatever should be for the betterment of our country, to make our country better, to improve the quality of life, or something of that nature. But even if you do that, it's like, okay, well, yeah, we're going to improve the quality of life by um, not allowing freedom of speech on, or not allowing the freedom of businesses to be able to, create whatever they want to create. That no, we're going to regulate that and you can't do it. So you have the thing like you said, to where, well, it's for the common good, for the betterment of our country, to not allow this type of speech on any of the networks.
Right. Like you pick out a bunch of key phrases and say, yeah, you can no longer say these words.
Well,
And so like and then you do a deep packet inspection, and then every time you see those words, like you drop those packets, or you manipulate the packets, take those words out.
and you could do it from anything, from whether it's hate speech or whether it's you know uh, quote unquote propaganda. You could do it from something that you eliminate all speech that's bad, that comments bad about the government, or
Yeah.
people that are in the government. Or you could
Or if
take
you
it to
say
where
anything bad about the president of the United States or some member of Congress or whatever it ends up being.
exactly,
Yeah.
or you could even get to the point to where it does it to people, to where, okay, well, you can say bad things about this person but not this person.
Right.
Like that's well, it's because it's the good of the country that you can't say bad things about this person, because we need to be unified in what we're doing. Like we need, this person is bringing us together, so you can only say good things about them. Like you could really get off the rails on that.
Oh yeah, for
So
sure.
that's concerning.
Ugh.
So that would
Yeah,
be.
the thing I'm thinking right now is does the good what is the good in this statement? What is it adding to the rule of law or the or government or the Constitution, and does it outweigh what we're talking about, which I would consider the bad?
Well, the biggest thing is, you have to regulate and promote commerce with foreign nations, among the several states, and with the native tribes. That's the original statement. So there's no guardrails there. To regulate commerce, to regulate and promote commerce with foreign nations, among the several states, and with the native tribes. And then what they have done with that is essentially like they do with all the other things, like, okay, well, we're regulating commerce. The FCC is regulating commerce by doing this. The EPA is regulating commerce because of this. It's, we're promoting commerce by doing this. You know, that is how they essentially get around it because there's no guardrails on that statement. Regulate and promote commerce. What does that mean? And that's where the courts come in and say, hey, no, this does not fit the regulation of commerce. So let's see. Although the form of it, let's see, state legislatures began enacting laws to relieve debtors of their debts, which undermine the rights of creditors and the credit market. States also erected an assortment of trade barriers to protect their own businesses from competing firms in neighboring states. And because state legislators controlled their own commerce, the federal Congress was unable to enter into credible trade agreements with foreign powers to open markets for American goods, in part by threatening to restrict foreign access to the American market. All this was a nationwide economic downturn that, rightly or not, was blamed on ruinous policies enacted by democratically elected legislatures. In 1787, political dissatisfaction with the economic situation led to the convention that convened. This was this is what, the Articles of Confederation, Declaration of Independence in 1776, and in between there, that's when this all happened.
Right.
So the new Constitution proposed to address debtor relief laws with the Contracts Clause, Article 1, Section 2, which barred states from impairing the obligation of contracts. To address, that's later in Section 10. To address problems of interstate trade barriers, the ability to enter trade agreements, it included the Commerce Clause, which grants Congress the power to regulate commerce with foreign nations. Moving the power to regulate interstate commerce to Congress would enable the creation of a free trade zone among the several states. So this is, okay, this is essentially the same thing they did with the EU. If you're a member of the EU, you have the ability to trade freely between the countries. So essentially what the EU did is created a more whatever over in Europe. It created a United States
a
in
United
Europe,
States,
a united country, a European Union. But they left the ability for people to leave, like the UK left, and they're losing hundreds of billions of dollars a year in trade, among other things. But so this is what they did. So this allowed the federal government to regulate commerce, to say, hey, no, you guys can't create stipulations between states of how this, like, we're getting free trade zones among the states. Removing the power to regulate international trade from the states would enable the president to negotiate, Congress to approve, treaties to open foreign markets to American-made goods. International also gave Congress the power to abolish the slave trade with other nations, international commerce, which it did effective in 1808. That's interesting. 1808, when they abolished slave trade with other nations, not in the U.S. They abolished the trading of slaves with other nations.
Yeah,
but
and
in the words
I
of
believe they said that you couldn't import slaves
correct,
anymore at all.
correct, yeah, you have to grow them at home.
Right.
You
Because that
can't.
makes it better. Yeah, that makes it okay.
As long as you're growing them at home, we don't need to import more. We're going to make our own now. We got to get the American slaves, not those other slaves. We don't. It's fucking horrible. But in the words of Chief
Oh,
Justice, what?
that just made me think of like this really dark thought that, like, the idea of being a slave, and like, and being human, and that most humans want to procreate, and and have families, and they need that as to give to a certain extent their life meaning. But then you also have to look at the juxtaposition that my kids are going to be born in slavery, that they are never going to know freedom. I could not imagine being saddled with the idea of that thought.
Well,
Like,
I mean that, and a lot of times what they would do is they would just rape the women, rape the
well,
slave
yeah, so
women.
there's that too. Well, isn't that fun?
Yeah. Oh yeah.
Like, just to make it a little bit more dark.
Yeah, you're welcome.
Yeah.
Hey, I mean, it happened. I
Yeah,
mean,
that's
it
true.
happened. So, dark or not,
Yeah.
that was the way people lived, and it's sad that we allowed it to go on for as long as we did. Let's see. But in the words of Chief Justice John Marshall, the enumeration of three distinct commerce powers in the Commerce Clause presupposes something not enumerated, and that something, if we regard the language of this subject of the sentence, must be exclusively internal commerce of a state. There you go. We talked about that in the Libertarian, about the internal commerce of the state. So Marshall, Chief Justice John Marshall, said something about that. So, for example, even when combined with a necessary and proper clause giving Congress the power to make all laws which shall be necessary and proper for carrying into execution of its enumerated powers, the Commerce Clause did not give Congress the power to touch slavery that was allowed by state governments within their borders. We literally just said this. If you take away Congress's power to regulate internal state, any commercial or non-commercial activity within a single state, this Constitution gives the ability for states to bring slavery back.
And this is what they're talking about.
And this was back in 1824. So essentially, in the words, the enumeration of three distinct presupposes something not enumerated, and that is anything that's exclusively internal to a state. The text of the Commerce Clause raises at least three questions of interpreting what is the meaning of commerce. Hey, we just talked about that. What is the meaning of among the several states, and what is the meaning of to regulate? And this is where all of this comes in. Like commerce. What is commerce? Commerce is what is the define commerce? Oops, helps if you get the right word. The activity of buying and selling, especially in a large scale, or social dealings between people. I mean, that pretty much covers buying and selling anything between two people or businesses. So that's where, commerce might be limited to the trade, exchange, or transportation of people and things, which would include, for example, agriculture, manufacturing, other methods of production, or it might expansively be interpreted to refer to any gainful activity or even to all social interaction. That's social dealings between people, social interaction. This is dated, but
Yeah.
Oh, hey, archaic. Commerce, the archaic definition of commerce.
Huh.
Okay.
You learn something new every day.
It's but hey, well, even when you're talking about from that perspective, the archaic version, and you're talking of going up to the current version. Prostitution's a version of commerce.
That is true.
It is social dealings
It is
between people.
commerce at the end of the day.
You're
Yeah,
trading
you're
goods
buying and selling services.
and or goods.
Mm-hmm.
To regulate might be limited to make regular, which would be subject to a particular type of commerce, to a rule, and would exclude, for example, any prohibition on trade as an end in itself, or it might expansively be interpreted to mean to govern, which would include prohibitions as well as pure regulations, to regulate. This is one of the fundamental reasons why we're trying to do this right now, and why we're going through this, is because words mean things. And that is the unfortunate part of this, is words mean things. So if words mean things, then we need to make sure we're using the right words. Right?
Yeah. I agree. It all just feels overwhelming to me, because it's like, okay, well, you change like a couple words here, a couple words there, and it's like, what does it mean? And then I just come to the conclusion, I'm just like, can't we all just get along? Can we all just like
Can we all just
just
stop?
take a step back for a minute?
Can we stop
And
being douches,
yeah,
please?
yeah,
Can we all just be nice people and stop being
yeah,
assholes? But
yeah,
but again, you're looking at this from the perspective of, you have different states which they make their money in different ways. So they want to protect their means, especially from the fact that most of your political group are well-to-do business people. Like those are the people that are
Yeah.
getting elected. They're the people that are running the businesses, or well, not so much now. It's more so the people that are running the businesses are buying the politicians. They're the ones that are paying them money and saying, "Hey, you make sure that my business stays, that I'm good with my business, and I'll continue to pay you."
Yeah. Well, and I I mean going back to the example where, where states were basically making it impossible to for to import goods from other states or from other countries. And it's like, why? Why did you feel like you needed to do that? Like why
Well,
and
I need to protect. I'm cutting down these trees, and I need to be able to charge $100 a tree, and I have a limited number of trees. But if I go 10 minutes up the road here in this other state, they have huge swaths of trees that they can sell for 75 and make a lot more money. So I want to make sure that I have protections for my trees to where I can continue to sell them, and I don't have to fight the other tree people.
yeah,
I need to protect my business. I need to protect myself. It's me, me, me. Like, why would I want
right.
somebody else to give them the ability to do what I'm already doing?
Yeah. And therein lies the problem again. It's the same. It's the same one we keep going back to, where it's like, so this isn't about you and your trees. This is about something bigger. And until you expand your mind and get outside of yourself, um, we're always going to have this problem.
Which, unfortunately, it's very difficult for people to do that
Yeah.
for some reason. Okay, so
Well,
among the
for
several
those people.
states might be limited to commerce that takes place between the states or between people of different states, as opposed to commerce that occurs between persons of the same state. Or it might expansively be interpreted to refer to commerce among the people of the several states, whether such commerce occurs between the people of the same state or in different states. So, so I think you really have to look at this from a from the perspective of there were 13 original colonies.
There were?
Yeah, yeah. When this was written, there's 13 colonies. You know, so you
I think I
essentially had
remember something like that in school.
yeah, you essentially have 13 different countries, right? That are trying to band together, that are trying to make, they're trying to survive. And you had each one vying for their way of life. And then you're talking, and you know how borders, like you go look over in Europe, the border between um, France and Spain, or Italy. A lot of those borders are, because of geographic, like mountains or whatever. Like there's an actual border, but you look at some of the places to where even between us and Canada, there's a road that runs along one side of it, and on one side of the road it's Canada, on the other side it's the United States. Like, and you'd see pictures of people would go out and they would sit along where the border is in their lawn chairs and talk to people on the other side of the country, or in the other country. Like, who's to stop? Like, if somebody's like, somebody on their porch on the other side of the road, they're like, hey, they're selling jam. Okay, well, I'm on the United States, they're in Canada. I'm gonna walk over and like, hey, I'll give
I'm gonna
you,
give me some jam.
yeah, give me some jam. Like, and you're talking about that's commerce between countries.
Right.
But he's 15 feet away across the street. What do you mean I
So what
can't
the
go over
fuck are
and
we doing
yeah.
here? Yeah.
So it's one of those things, like, how, what is it? There's a in is it Tennessee, or I don't know. There's some place, there's a library that is sits right on the border. What is the library?
I don't know, man.
Um Haskell Free Library and Opera House. It's straddling the U.S. Canada border in Vermont. it literally, they built it right on the line, and there's yeah, in the library there's an actual line on the floor. If you're on the left side of this line, you're in one country, and you can take a step over and you're in the other country.
How exciting is that?
Like, I mean, there's the rock line, there's the pillar.
Oh, that's cute.
But there was something. Here it is. In March 2025, at the start of the second presidency of Donald Trump, the United States government announced its intent to restrict Canadians from using the main entrance unless they first pass through U.S. Customs.
Oh man.
Until then, only Canadians who could access the library via the main entrance were library membership card holders and staff. The U.S. officials cited security concerns as a reason for the change. So what the library did is they opened an emergency door to the public.
Yep.
But that's one of the things. Like how do you regulate that?
I
There's
don't think
always
you
going to be
do. I mean, just the cuz like even hearing that, it just sounds like a power trip, right?
exactly.
Like, and it's like and then I go back to the fact that oh, we actually elected this dude that behaves this way. And you know, I heard somebody I've heard somebody say something maybe not, but I've heard this quote is like, we got the president that we deserved, and maybe
Yeah.
we did. I don't know. Um, but there was enough people that were angry enough or what, for whatever reason decide that this guy was going to make a good president. I don't see it personally. Um, but and so I don't know, man. Maybe this is what we got to go through right now. And suffer the consequences of the choices that we all made. Not saying that not saying that the Constitution can't be shored up or can't be changed or be updated, and I feel like it should, and what we're doing is meaningful, but some of this stuff is just like, all right, do we really need to put guardrails in place for this, or do we need to think about how to um, better educate people, like how to not turn against each other, and how to not let some how to not let things get this bad again,
Yeah.
I guess.
And
Because
that's
because if we start trying to apply bounds to every single edge case like this library, we're gonna go insane.
yep. Well, and that's the thing. It's like, okay, well, what? Somebody's going to come in, and they're both going to go to the opera house. You have Canadians on one side, you have Americans on the other, and they're going to start giving prescription drugs. You have somebody that's in Canada and gets their insulin for gets insulin for $10 a pop. Someone
Hmm.
down in the U.S., their insulin is $300 a piece.
Right.
It's like, okay, so you talk to somebody up in Canada. It's like, hey, I'll pay you $20 for an insulin dose,
Yeah.
and then we'll meet at the library. You go in the Canadian entrance, I'll go in the U.S. entrance, and we'll just happen to meet each other in the middle somewhere.
This is crazy.
I, but I mean those are real things. I mean that was the justification. Oh well, people are smuggling things.
And my response to that is, who cares?
No, no. If
Like,
somebody is
is,
if
is
somebody
this
can,
really something that you want to regulate? Like, if people want to go to that library and smuggle some shit, okay. Like, 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 like they found a clever way to get around to get around U.S. customs.
what are you talking about? That
Yeah,
doesn't happen.
yeah.
There are no companies that do that.
Right.
why should
Yeah,
people be able to
yeah,
do it?
there's no companies finding loopholes. And I guess that's the other thing too, is that like, you want to talk about regulating all these individuals and their behavior and their actions and stuff like that. And you have pharmaceutical companies that are making billions of dollars by selling people addictive drugs. Like, but no. This dude can't get his insulin.
Correct.
Yeah. Okay. Cool.
No,
Yeah.
and you look at that stuff, and then it's one of those things. It's like, oh well, it's the bureaucratic mess that, oh, there's just so much that has to be done to get this done. And the problem, one of the biggest problems with the United States, is everything is about making more profit.
Yeah.
The fact that it's everybody's, quote unquote, it's every business's job to make more profit, to make more money. You have to make more money. If you're not making more, then you're failing. And that is unfortunate.
Yeah. If you have 3 quarters where you have not increased your revenue, you are you are a miserable failure, which I think is an absolute travesty that's the model that we've adopted.
Yeah, you what do you mean? You've only made, you've only profited $500,000 for the past 3 years. Why aren't you at a million? Why aren't you at 2 million? Like, what?
Yeah.
Why are you failing? Like, okay, $500 million in profit a year is failing, or five hundred
Yeah.
thousand dollars profit in a year is failing. Well, yeah, if you don't make it 600, then a million, then if you're not making more, then you're failing. And I don't.
Yeah.
That's a
Yeah,
problem.
and I mean, yeah, and if you take that business model to a venture capitalist company that invests in your business, they'll take your like or as, let's say you adopt that mid quarter or mid whatever or mid burn, they will take your business away from you, like and then they will run it either into the ground or like in an exponential direction where all they care about is profit, not the
Yep.
people that are working there,
Yep.
not the product that's being made, not the quality of the product, nothing.
No, it's amazing to see that. Like, you have a product that's doing well. They create a name for themselves. It's a really good product, whatever it is, and then they get the investors who then are, okay. Well, this is a great product. You have a great name, but how do we make it? How do we make more money? How can we make the product cheaper? How can we, cut corners? How can we do stuff to make
Yeah.
more money off of this, so that we can increase our revenue share,
Yeah.
versus how do we
Now
continue
that we have
making that
yeah,
good product?
yeah, exactly. Now that we have brand recognition and a customer base, like how do we make how do we make this crappier but
Or,
just good enough so people will still buy it.
yep. Okay. Well, instead of making it in the U.S., we can make this for pennies on the dollar for what we were making before. If we make it over in Thailand, or we make it over
Yeah.
in China, or Taiwan, or whatever, we can make so much more money if we stand up the manufacturing over there, because it's a lot. The labor is a lot cheaper, so we'll be able
Yeah.
to make more, and we'll be able to make more money off of it versus it being made here, and having to charge so much and not making. Instead of making $10 off an item, we can make $40 off of it.
Yeah. And let's completely ignore the fact that you're exploiting foreign labor markets and to a certain extent enslaving people to make your product.
I mean, you would think that would be. I mean, because really, all it's doing is it's creating. You're creating wealth in other countries. Like, yeah, the labor is cheaper, but okay, well, we can make it here for $40. I can make it over there for $2, and then I got to pay $20 in tariffs, or I got to pay however much to ship it and whatever. So here it costs me $40 to make. Over there it costs me $5 to make, and then it's an extra $25 to get it shipped here per item. So now I can sell it for the same price and make an extra $10 per item, because it's cheaper to do it over there versus to do it here, and pay
Yeah.
people what they need to be paid here and just distribute it here. It's still cheaper to do it over there. So that's the unfortunate part about how a lot of this works. I mean, it's the same way in IT for us. You know, to have a help desk that's here in the U.S. versus shipping it off over to India.
Yeah. But we both know there's trade-offs to that. And we've seen
Um,
it firsthand.
I don't know what you're talking about, man. Their help desks are fantastic.
I didn't sign an NDA.
Um, it's funny. Okay, so let's get back to this real quick. In addition to other pervasive evidence of the public meaning of these terms, the slavery issue helps clarify the original public meaning of these terms at the time of their enactment. Commerce meant the activity of selling, trading, exchanging, or transporting goods and people, as distinct from producing the things being moved. To regulate meant to make regular, but at least with respect to the international trade, it also included the power to ban the trade in some items, as Congress banned the slave trade. Among the several states meant between one state and others, not within a state where slavery existed as an economic activity. Okay, so this is what they're saying that it meant there. So commerce was the activity of selling, trading, or exchanging, transporting goods and people. I love how they put and people because
Yeah.
of the slave trade. To regulate means make regular,
Well, they're
and
just busting them back and forth, man. That they're
exactly.
not doing anything untoward.
From the founding until today, the meaning of commerce has not much been changed. Let's see. 1944, when the court held commerce included a business such as insurance, which for 100 years has been held solely under the a subject of internal state regulation. Instead, the modern growth of Congress's regulatory powers has been allowed by the courts, adopting an expansive reading of the necessary and proper clause to give Congress power over a broad range of interstate economic activities with substantial effect on interstate commerce when such regulation is essential to the regulation of interstate commerce. So, so when you're talking national markets, healthcare is a national market, insurance
Hmm.
is a national market. Like we already said, telecommunications, national market. Like those are businesses that operate within multiple states, and they hold it over multiple states.
Insurance, though, at least not medical insurance, because you can't sell medical insurance across state lines still.
Well, you can't. No, well, okay. You can if you are in that other state. Like United Healthcare
Yeah,
provides,
right. But
health
they have to have a
insurance.
presence, and they have to have, yeah,
Correct.
in that state.
Yes. The court explained. Let's see. The New Deal court said, this is 1941, the power of Congress over interstate commerce is not confined to the regulation of commerce among states. While manufacture is not of itself interstate commerce, the shipment of manufactured goods interstate is such commerce, and the prohibition of such shipment by Congress is indubitably a regulation of commerce. Okay? The power also extends to those activities interstate which so affect interstate commerce or the exercise of power of Congress over it as to make regulation of them an appropriate means for the attainment of a legitimate end. The exercise of the granted power of Congress to regulate interstate man, this is whew. Okay. But in McCulloch versus Maryland, Chief Justice Marshall insisted that should Congress, under the pretext of executing its powers, pass laws for the accomplishment of objects not entrusted to the government, it would become a painful duty of this tribunal to say that such an act was not the law of the land. In
Duty.
Darby, Justice Stone wrote, whatever their motive and purpose, regulations of commerce which did not infringe some constitutional prohibition are within the plenary power conferred on Congress by the Commerce Clause. That's the court. See, this is where you get into what is what. Um, See, and this is I think where you're getting a lot of the extra terms from the libertarian to where they're saying you can't regulate within state commerce or non-commercial activity to regulate production and sale of goods and services in national markets. Okay, so I think they're trying to put limitations on what they do based on all of the cases that have gone. Okay, wait a second. Hold on here. In the 90s, Rehnquist Court treated these New Deal cases as the high water mark of congressional power. In the cases U.S. versus Lopez and U.S. versus Morrison, the court confined this regulatory authority to interstate economic activity. In addition, in a concurring opinion on Gonzalez versus Rake, Justice Scalia maintained that under Lopez, Congress may regulate even non economic local activity if that regulation is a necessary part of a more general regulation of interstate commerce. There you go. That gave Congress the ability to regulate non economical local activity if that regulation is a necessary part of a more general regulation of interstate commerce. That is where you have the libertarian part here. This provision shall not authorize regulation or prohibition of any non-commercial activity or of any commercial activity that is confined within a single state, regardless of effects outside of the state. There you go. That's why, right here. Boop.
The more you know.
Right? Oh,
Yeah.
here's your healthcare one. In the healthcare case of NFIB versus Sibelius, I guess, a majority of the justices found that a mandate to compel a person to engage in the economic activity of buying health insurance. This is the whatever the ACA. Sorry, Obamacare.
But they still did it anyways, because if you don't carry health insurance, you
Well,
still get charged that $600 in taxes or whatever. But
so
because
so well,
yeah,
no, but
because
this is where it's from. This is what
yeah,
it says. The mandate to compel a person to engage in the economic activity of buying health insurance was beyond the powers of Congress under both the Commerce and Necessary Proper Clause. The individual mandate cannot be upheld as an exercise of Congress's power under the Commerce Clause. That clause authorizes Congress to regulate interstate commerce, not to order individuals to engage in it. Moreover, even if the individual mandate is necessary to the Act's insurance reforms, such an expansion of federal power is not a proper means for making those reforms effective. Instead, Chief Justice Roberts provided the fifth vote to uphold the ACA by adopting a saving construction that the penalty enforcing the insurance requirement was non coercive enough to be considered a tax rather than a Commerce Clause regulation. This is where they made it a tax. And Congress has the ability to collect taxes versus regulating commerce. So instead of saying that Congress was regulating commerce using the ACA by making someone participate in commerce, they said, yeah, but it's not commerce. They're saying if you don't have this, we're going to tax you.
yeah. But you make it cost prohibitive not to engage in the activity by doing that. Like, and so like uh,
But the thing is you're saying,
how
oh,
how
well,
people twist themselves into these pretzels is just beyond me.
well, if you look at it, for a family,
Oh yeah,
the ACA is like
it's a
it's like
lot less
$2,000 a
to
month.
pay the it's a lot less to pay the tax. I agree.
Yeah, it's like $2,000 a month versus $600 for the year.
Yeah.
Let's do the math real quick.
Well,
You're
and then
doing that, right?
on top of that, it's a checkbox on a tax return that says, "Do you have health insurance? Yes or no?" And so take that for what it's worth, I guess.
Yeah. So
I'm not saying lie on your tax returns, IRS, by the way, at all.
you're gonna get audited for the past 5 years of whether or not you had health insurance.
Yeah. I probably am now.
So okay, so here's The dispute over commerce turns in large part on the purpose of one attributes to the clause of the Constitution as a whole, and what one thinks is the relevance of such a purpose to the meaning of the text. At Philadelphia in 1787, the convention resolved that Congress could legislate in all cases to which the states are separately incompetent
You're incompetent.
or in which the harmony of the United States may be interrupted by the exercise of individual legislation.
Oh, excuse me.
This was then translated by the Committee of Detail into the present enumeration of powers in Article 1, Section 8, which was accepted as a functional equivalent by the convention without much discussion. Proponents of an expansive reading claim that the power to regulate commerce should extend to any problem the United States cannot separately solve. Those who support a narrower reading observe that the Constitution aims to constrain as well as to empower Congress, and that the broadest reading of the commerce power extends well beyond anything the framers imagined. As the dissenters in the healthcare case observed, Article 1 contains no whatever it takes to solve a national problem power. This
Whatever,
is,
dude. Like,
I mean, there's more stuff to read here. I'm not gonna, you had your common interpretation, and then you have people giving their opinion on stuff. Yeah, identify some of the key advantage of decentralizing, and this is what we were talking about. Like, how do you know,
well,
I can
for me, at
understand.
the end of the day, what was the intent? What was the intent of creating that tax and that law? It was to get people to force them into a behavior that they may or may not have wanted to engage in.
Yeah.
And to me, that is wrong.
So
And that should be the end of the discussion. That's the problem that I have.
so when we're talking about the commerce originally, well, like the reasoning behind it is right here. This says that this is what it was originally made to solve, was this problem. So state legislators began enacting laws to relieve debtors who were numerous of their debts, which undermine the rights of creditors in the credit market. So the state saying, hey, you have $100 million debt to this other state, you're relieved of it. You don't have to pay it. Like,
For
what's
whatever
the other
reason,
state going to do? They're going to send the militia?
Yeah.
States also erected an assortment of trade barriers to protect their own businesses from competing firms in neighboring states. This is the tree problem that I was just talking about. Hey, I'm selling my trees for $100 a pop, man. This guy over here, he's got an abundance and he doesn't have anybody to sell them to, but he could come take mine away and he could sell them for 75 a pop. He put me out of business.
So what's the solution then?
To give Congress the power to regulate that and say, hey, the states can't say that you can't buy from state lines. It was essentially to make the states cohesive versus separate entities.
Yeah, but
that was the biggest thing. We have to work together.
But now we're talking about how there's all these unintended consequences of that.
Correct. And that's where you get stuff like, the Affordable Care Act. Like, well, does Congress have the power to say that, you have to buy something? Well, no, they're not saying you have to buy it. They're just saying if you don't have it, you're going to pay tax.
Yeah.
You're going to get taxed on it. Hey,
yeah.
Do you have land?
We're just going to loophole that like we loophole everything else.
Well, no. Do you have land? Yeah. Okay. Well, you got to pay tax on that. Do you have a car? Yeah. Well, you got to pay tax on that. Do you have health insurance? No. Okay. Well, you got to pay a tax on that.
and that's fair. Like when I look at it in the sense of, okay, you don't have to own a house. Technically, you don't have to own a car. You don't have to drive. There's other modes of transportation. Yeah, it's a pain in the ass. I
Yeah,
don't disagree with that.
you don't have to own land.
But they're basically they they're turning the argument around where it's like, okay, you don't have to buy you don't have to buy this, but if you don't, we're gonna make it cost you. That I don't think those two arguments equate.
No, I don't disagree. My whole thing is instead of charging me a tax, provide me with health care.
Yeah, completely agree with you.
Don't charge me a tax, provide me with health care.
Yeah,
Like what
I'm with you.
like that tax is not for the betterment or the general welfare of the people, in my opinion. It
Right.
does nothing. It does nothing to help me, but it gives me a small incentive to try to buy from your marketplace or to have healthcare in some way, shape, or form, which is more than likely going to cost me more than what the tax is.
Yeah.
So, and I know that there's, you talk about the majority of the people in the U.S. Most of us want some sort of national health care. We already have it. We already have Medicaid, Medicare. We already have all of that stuff.
Oh, we got the VA. That's what I use for healthcare.
We we already have all of that stuff. The problem is here we go. Here we go back. We're full circle. The
Yeah.
problem is that only benefits a certain group of people.
Right.
They've put limits on who can get those things because what they what you have is you have businesses, the healthcare industry, lobbying the government, saying no, you can't tell us that we if you do this we're going to go out of business. And to me, I say, well, you shouldn't be in business in the first place.
Yeah. I mean, and you could say the same thing to the person that's cutting down trees. Hey, if you can't figure out a way to make this profitable, you need to do something else.
Yep, that's. I
Um,
mean, that's the way. But that's a capitalist. That's a true capitalist market.
yeah, and I agree with that. As long as no one is regulating that tree, uh, that lumber person's market as far as making it more expensive for him to do business. Yes, I 100% agree. And yeah, but there's all these different parameters and different like things that could get placed on even that most simple the lumber cutters um, market that are going to cause problems for him. But I feel like that should be his own personal responsibility. Like, if if the price of lumber goes down, or like somebody floods the market with a bunch of lumber, and he has to sell it for less, you got to figure that out.
Or the the, the president of the United States creates a tariff war with a foreign country that's buying most of your lumber, and all of a sudden they don't want to buy your lumber anymore, and then they go buy it from another country, and the president gives that country billions of dollars for their market, and then
Yeah.
does the government have to step in and save your business?
Well, that goes back to the regulation thing. Like, there are forces that are purposefully being put upon that person that that are completely outside of his control, and that are actively being done. I don't know. I kind of think that in that case, in that situation, maybe they should be bailed out. Maybe the government does have a responsibility. Like, and if you could actually come to me and make a logical argument and say, hey, these tariffs are going to be good, but we're going to hurt for a little while, like, which I don't think that's what's going on here. But um, then I'd say, okay, yeah, then let's come up with a plan of how you're going to subsidize my market while we figure this out. Like, that should be part of the plan.
Well, that would require thinking and foresight. Well, I mean, you gotta look at it. Take the banking. thing in 2008,
Oh
where you
yeah,
had all
yeah,
the subprime mortgages,
yep.
and you had people
And
that
then you had all
weren't paying
well,
them.
and then you had some companies that got bailed out and some companies that didn't. And you know, there were people at the top that were deciding which ones were too big to fail and which ones weren't. And um, that's not that's not okay either.
But supposedly all the money was paid back. All the money that was lent out for all that, it was all paid back.
I want to see the receipts.
Well, they
I
they they have them
I want to see
somewhere.
the canceled checks, bro. Like I want to see the ledger.
Well, I mean, they do have it. I mean, they even have it for like the PPP loans. The thing was, is that the 2008 crisis where the banks were bailed out, they were required to pay back the money, and I believe a majority of them, if not all of them, did, or they went out of business and somebody else took on that debt. But when you talk about the COVID stuff and the PPP loans, almost all of those were forgiven. That money was
Hmm.
just handed out,
Yeah,
and
people were going out buying Mercedes Benzes with their triple P loans.
oh yeah, and
Yeah.
they never gave any. They never had to repay anything.
Yep.
So that's one of those. Well, that's just like the farmer bailouts that are happening right now. I'm pretty sure they're never going to have to pay any of that back.
I doubt it. No.
So, it goes from those things from like the general welfare. Do you you know do you have something from the perspective of, okay, if you had a nationalized health care, if you had Medicaid or Medicare for all. I think Medicaid is the one for people. Medicare is the over 65 or whatever, I
Yeah.
believe,
Medicaid, I think, is the one for low
for
income.
low income. Yeah. So, if you have that, you know, or even the VA, which I do find interesting that the veterans have their own healthcare system.
For
Like the
better or for
fact that
worse.
our government, from that perspective, pays for a completely separate healthcare system for people that do not. They use all of the taxpayers' money to create this healthcare system just for the people that have been in the military. I'm not saying it's wrong. I'm just saying the fact that we have the ability to do that, but we can't provide health care for all of the constituents. The
Right.
only way you're going to get this health care is if you are part of our armed services. No, it doesn't matter the capacity that you were in. You could have never have left, whatever base you were on in the U.S. You could have never seen combat. You could have, just as long as you were in some way, shape, or form part of the armed forces, you get to be a part of this socialized health care that the government has created that uses the taxpayers' money to fund and have, but you can't be a
Yeah.
part of it.
Well, and the other part of it too is that they have two separate healthcare systems. They have one healthcare system for when you're in the military, and they have one healthcare system for when you get out. And granted, the VA healthcare is not free for everyone. Depending upon your service disabilities and things like that. Like there's a lot of people out there that actually have to pay for it. I'm fortunate enough to where I don't. And um, there's so yeah, so there's levels and there's tiers inside of that. But just the fact, but I agree with you that just the fact that we have it and it's available and that infrastructure is built out, like couldn't we expand that and make it into something bigger? You know?
Well, I mean, and that's the thing. The VA is a state provided or federal government provided healthcare solution from soup to nuts. Like they are a separate entity that there are VA hospitals or whatever. Like you as a veteran you could go to like an urgent care, right? Could
Yeah.
you go to an urgent care that's not VA?
Yeah, I just show them my veterans health ID card, and they see that I'm you know, and then it all goes through the VA, and then I either pay for that visit or a copay or not, depending upon my situation.
So let me get this right. They have a completely separate healthcare organization that provides healthcare, but also you have the ability to go to, for the most part, I would imagine. I don't know if they have in network or out of network stuff, but
Yeah,
you
for
could go
emergency
somewhere.
care. Yeah. I can't make random appointments at a doctor's office and be like, hey, VA, pay for this. But for emergency care, yes.
For emergency
I
care, you have the ability to go wherever you can go for emergency care,
Right.
and you are provided somewhat of a insurance, right? A type of
Yeah.
insurance, whether you have to pay a copay or you have to pay for the emergency room visit or whatever. And I'd imagine you have some participating emergency rooms that don't charge you a copay or something like that, like state run.
I haven't had to deal with it yet, like in that capacity.
Okay, but it's interesting that we have this already, that our veterans don't use United Healthcare, Aetna, MetLife, or whatever, these third party for profit insurance companies that are created for the sole purpose to make profit. They have no other purpose other than to make profit.
Yeah.
Period. But we already have a socialized medicine, socialized part of our government. This is amazing to me. Socialism bad. What do you
Right.
think this is? It is a
Right.
socialized medicine for our veterans. It's like, oh, well, they're lucky to have that because they did all of this
Yeah.
for our country. And
We served our
yeah,
country and we did our duty and blah blah blah. And then that's how people justify it in their minds. But
exactly.
but then the people that didn't serve are not justified in getting that care, which is I like makes no
Oh,
sense to me.
well, unless you don't make enough money. If you don't make enough money, you can jump through hoops and get
Yeah.
Medicaid, and you can get state provided health insurance that is essentially relatively the same thing as the VA health insurance, except it is provided. They require healthcare providers, whether it's United Healthcare, MetLife, Aetna, whoever. I think they have to bid it out or something of that nature. The states do for their Medicaid, and then the states get money from the government to pay for that Medicaid to help pay for it. And the states have the ability to reject it or to accept it. But if they accept the money, they have stipulations that they have to meet to get that funding from the government. If they don't get that funding, then I believe they can put whatever they want on it. Like they can create whatever stipulations to qualify for Medicaid if they don't take the government's funding for it. But if they do, they
Mhm.
have other requirements that they have to meet for their constituents. But that Medicaid or Medicare, that is provided by a health insurance company, whether it's United Healthcare, Aetna, MetLife. Like I said, I believe the states bid that out to healthcare companies. Blue Cross Blue Shield is another big one. But so it's really interesting to me that we are socializing bits and pieces of healthcare commerce, socializing bits and pieces of it, but only with certain constraints around it, and not for everybody. So some people get it, but other people don't. You're not part of the in crowd. And
Yeah.
and the really interesting is, and and I don't know how you feel about this, Josh, but if you go up to a veteran, and I've actually had this happen to me, and you say, hey, thank you for your service. It's like, why the hell are you thanking me? I didn't do crap. Like I never saw combat. I never saw, like, I was never in any danger. Why are you thanking me for? I didn't do anything. You know.
Hmm. Yeah,
Uh,
I've kind of changed my mind on that, like over the last few years, I would say, where before it was just kind of like, well, I just did my job, and I wouldn't say anything to anybody about it. I would just say, hey, thank you, I appreciate it. But in
yeah.
my head, it was kind of like, like why, like, um, and then part of it too is like, you know, because I feel like some people just say it to say it because it's the right thing to say, and now I just kind of let it go. Where it's like, and if I really think that somebody is honestly and appreciatively saying thank you for that, thank you for your service, like I try to, uh, I I try to hold that and give them back the same respect that they're giving me. But most of the time, it's kind of like a hand wave, right? Where
Exactly.
where it's just like, thank you for your service. And it's like, okay, thank you. Like, and I just move on about my day. But it's like, okay, did you really mean that? Or,
Or are you just saying
and
it
with,
for
yeah,
performative reasons?
yeah. And, you know, I think most people that serve, they do try to gauge their service in some way where it's like, oh, well, I wasn't special forces. I wasn't getting shot at. I wasn't doing this. And so it's like, well, I'm not as deserving of this person that maybe was operating at a higher risk level. And I, and I don't know where that attitude or that idea comes from, but there's a lot of people, veterans that have that mindset. And I've tried to get out of it. And I was like, you know what? I did my duty. I did my service. I did the best I could. Like, and I did see combat. Like, I mean, it's not the same combat as somebody that's Army infantry or that was joint special operations, but it I served. And I don't know if my service means more or less, or if you even need to do that kind of an equivalence relation to that service. It's just that you raise your right hand. They took some of your rights away so that you could protect um, protect the things that we have for sometimes for better and sometimes for worse, especially in my case. Looking at some of the things I did and the things that I was involved in, I'm um, not super proud of, put it that way.
I mean, but that's one of the things that's part of it is you're you're essentially, for the most part, you don't have a choice. It's not
Right.
a hey, I want to or I don't want to. It's no, you belong to you. We own you now. You are a
Yeah.
slave to the country for this amount of time, and you will do what we want you to do, whether you want to or not. Obviously, you pledge an oath to the Constitution, and it's your duty to uphold the Constitution, and and there's a whole big thing now about illegal orders and all that stuff. It's one of those things. It's like, hey, we need you to go in here. There's whatever these people that are causing us problems. You go in there and it's a bunch of kids, and you're like, I'm supposed to eliminate all these people. How? Who? I don't know that this is what I want to do. Like, I mean, not everybody has to go through that. Not everybody's, but it's one of those things of you're given orders and you have to carry out those orders, and then it's up to you to determine whether or not they
They're
are
lawful or
within the
not.
constitutional means of what you're supposed to be doing. But anyways, I don't want to
Yeah.
get off on that. We're talking about commerce. Um,
Right.
but no, it's interesting that we, as a country, we have certain pieces that are considered, oh, well, this is a necessary thing to socialize this part, but we don't want to socialize this part because that would be bad for business, because that would hurt these other businesses that have been created to fill a hole because the government didn't do that beforehand. So it's sort of interesting. Like you talk about, you can do it really easy of fire departments. Most fire departments are socialized. Socialized meaning taxes pay for them. So anything that your taxes pay for, that a group of people are paying together, paying money to fund something, that is socialized, a socialized thing. So if we're looking at the fire department or the police department or um, you know uh, kind of sort of ambulance service to an extent, we're paying for all of those things. My taxes that I'm paying for pay for the ability to, hey, I can call the fire department and they're going to come and save what they can for whatever, because it benefits the entire community. Now, does Congress have the ability to regulate something like a fire department? Is that commerce? Is it something that happens within states? Do they have a way to say that, hey, you have to do this because it is for the national good or the general welfare of the people? To require, well, you have to have some sort of um, fire suppression, or fire, something to respond to fires because it's for the national good. You have something like what, was it the Chicago fire or whatever that took down like half the city or something?
Yeah, because they weren't maintaining their fire departments.
I don't remember exactly what it was, but go fire. But there was it, oh, was it Chicago that the Great Chicago Fire? Yeah, was it kind of that burned this American city of Chicago from the 8th through the 10th. Approximately 300 people killed, 3.3 square miles of the city, 17,000 structures. Along hot, dry, windy conditions, the wooden construction prevalent in the city led to, yep, a fire leapt at the south branch of the Chicago River and destroyed much of central Chicago. The city government improved building codes to stop the rapid spread of future fires and rebuild rapidly to those higher standards. A donation from the United Kingdom spurred the establishment of the Chicago Public Library.
Oh,
Aw,
that's
country's
nice.
helping us. Isn't
Yeah.
that nice?
That.
The Chicago Fire Department had 185 firefighters
There
with
is hope for
17.
humanity. I just realized that.
Do what?
There is hope for humanity.
Yeah, right. Yeah. So, due to an error by a watchman, the firefighters were initially sent to the wrong place, allowing the fire to grow unchecked.
Whoops.
So, while the firefighters were tired from having fought numerous small fires and one large fire in the week before, these factors come up. So it's one of those things. But obviously, the state's going to step in, and this goes back to our, where is it? Where is it? Legislate for the general welfare insofar as such an action is necessary to address problems that are national in scope, that are unlikely to be addressed adequately by state or local governments. Obviously, it's within the best interest of the city of Chicago and or the state of Illinois to do what they need to do to make sure that doesn't happen again, where they change building codes and all of that stuff to benefit that. But when we're talking about, the ability of Congress regulate commerce, hey, we're going to ban the selling of alcohol. We're going to ban the selling of tobacco. You know,
Yeah,
supposedly
I
Congress
don't.
has the ability to do that, right?
Yeah, I
We're going to ban the selling of marijuana. I
right.
mean, it's one of those things where how do you regulate? How do you put guardrails on that?
How do you regulate the regulators?
Yeah. How do you make sure that they're regulating appropriately? Is
Yeah.
there, do you leave a loophole for um, the states? Well, you remember we were talking before about how in, I think it was the Libertarian Constitution, that you have the governors of the states to create essentially a third branch of government or a third whatever oversight that can, any law that Congress passes, if you get so many of the governors to agree, they can strike down any law and it doesn't become law.
Yeah. And I think on its face, I think something like that makes sense. I don't know if you place that in the hands of the governors or how you do it, or maybe even put a vote to 2/3 of the people or something like that. Whatever it ends up being, I think there does have to be an overall guardrail, like almost like when you think of the three branches of government and the checks and balances that they place on each other, and I wonder if there should almost be another one, um, to as some kind of fault override where um where it doesn't matter what the Supreme Court says or what precedence is set. If some way for it's like, hey, if the people don't like this, if the people are not interested in this, there's a way out. And I guess you can say that that's being done through voting and through representatives and stuff like that. But I almost feel like there should be another, like a more direct um a more direct avenue. Maybe I'm just that was
Yeah.
like vomit out of my brain
Well, I
for a
mean,
second.
you talk about something like that, and this goes back to what the conservative constitution does about money. Congress shall establish a board of treasury. One member appointed, from the House, the Senate. One member appointed by the members appointed, like every 3 years. And then they talk about bills, and they talk about where the money's being spent and things like that. Libertarian Constitution kind of does the same thing. I think it's section 211. Yeah, excessive governmental burdens to promote sound fiscal monetary total outlays. Like they're limiting, trying to limit those things and put guardrails on stuff for the money spending, but they don't talk about the regulation part and what Congress has the ability,
Yeah,
what they have the ability to regulate, and should there be a regulation oversight? Should there be
well,
something that you get a bipartisan committee of 5 people or something? Oh, hey, look, that's the Supreme Court, or something of that nature that says, yes, you can do this, or no, you can't do this based on the Constitution. This is not in the spirit of the Constitution that says this needs to be for the general welfare of the entire population, or something of that nature. When we're talking the way that we're redoing a lot of these things to where the federal government is to the benefit of all of the people, not just a select few people. You know,
yeah,
it the president shouldn't be making a profit off of the country. That is not the job of the president to make profit off of his stature or his place in government.
yeah,
Representatives should not be being able to trade stocks. Like there shouldn't be the nepotism of appointing family members to different positions within the government, like or people that and that's one of the things. Like, well, they're his cabinet members. Like the president appoints people to the cabinet members. Well, they're being approved by they're approved by the Congress, so or approved by Congress. So what's the problem? It's all of those things that you try to keep those checks and balances in. But I don't know how many times have people been denied a cabinet position by Congress.
it doesn't happen often.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. So
Uh, and, yeah,
so
and
do
so
those checks and balances actually exist? I guess is the question.
yeah, and I think they do, and I think they work in some uh, in some instances, but I think there's enough precedence to where it's like you're looking at this and it's like, well, it doesn't the three checks and balances, they don't really work anymore. Not all the time, and not enough to where it protects the power of the people. Um, case in point, the tax on the tax on not having health care. I think that was a failure of the checks and balances for whatever reason. Um, and and I'm sure we could pull out a dozen or 2 dozen more, whether it's cabinet members or anything else. It's just it's almost like there needs to be another layer added to the cake, or instead of a triangle, like and I'm not thinking of a square, but almost like a um, like if I was drawing it out, like you'd have the three parts of the triangle on the outside, and then you'd have another one in the middle that had lines to each of the three, where you could pull out that check at any time.
But then the question is how do you make sure that those checks don't get don't get put in the same position that you have. Like you, that was the whole
True.
thing about the wide amount of representation from a perspective of having numerous people,
Yeah.
right?
You'd have
Um,
to set the threshold pretty high. That you'd have to set the bounds high, I think is how it would have to go. Like, sort of like making changes to the Constitution.
and that's well, and that's one of the things is the more people you have, the less corrupt it's supposed to be. You're
Right.
supposed to be able to balance that out. If the House of Representatives is 435 people. If we change that to 1,100 people, that's supposed to be able to take away some of the corruption. But then you have more voices. More voices means it usually takes longer and it's harder to get things
Yeah.
done.
It's more noise and it's less signal.
So, you know, it's a tricky balance between those. When they're talking at the Supreme Court right now to have term limits on the Supreme Court. Is it better to have term limits or is it better to expand the number of justices? You know,
Yeah.
I mean, and you're looking, and this is a funny thing. Like you've watched the last, I think, three justices that were added. The whole thing with overturning Roe v. Wade, that was a big question that was asked like multiple times of the different justices and they answered,
And I think they
in
all
their
said no.
they
Yeah.
answered in their circular reasoning of, oh no, I'm not going to do this. Then they get in and they do it.
Yeah.
So,
What, people lie?
exactly.
They're
Well, not
dishonest
justices,
to
not
get what they want.
not well. The person that was arguing made a really good point, and I just realized that their point was valid. So I had to change my opinion.
And people are entitled to change their opinions. Like I think that's another thing that we have a problem with in this society is that if somebody says something online and then 2 years later they say something different, it's like, well, you said this, so like, what you're stuck in that. But yeah,
Oh
like
yeah.
as far as a direct question saying, hey, would you do this, and then going back on it, that's a little bit different of an argument.
Well, not
Um,
not only that, but you're talking in the
oh
time
yeah,
frame that it
yeah, not a
happened.
lot. Well, and especially when you're talking about such an overarching issue that has and an argument that has plagued this country for the last 50 years, you know. Yeah, it's a little bit something different.
That's the problem with when you're talking about these checks and balances is all they have to do is eventually they just have to make it to getting enough. And
Right.
that's what's if you get enough people eventually over the years bought off and basically you get enough like-minded people um, going along a certain route and that's what you get with the two-party system, which we're hoping to eliminate by having
Yeah.
a different type of voting.
Yeah.
But again, all of
Or
this
or, or anybody that is going to pray at an altar of an ideology, like which is what
correct.
the two-party system is at the end of the day. Uh,
Yeah, so we hope to eliminate that by doing the different voting. So, and we talked about this before. Of there isn't one thing that's going to fix our country. One change is not going to fix everything. It has to be a multitude of changes to fix all of the different things. And when we're talking about just this stuff to regulate commerce with foreign nations among several states and Indian tribes, it, there's so much to regulate commerce. What does that like? Okay, well that means that Congress should be able to regulate any activity between foreign nations among the several states and with the Indian tribes. So they should be able to create laws on those things. But then, you get the interpretation, oh well, they don't if it says among the several states, it doesn't say within the several states. It doesn't say between and within. So that's where these little tweaks that we're talking about, getting that clear, concise language so that there isn't a lot to be left to interpretation. But then, even if you do that clear, concise language, to where you're saying, yes, Congress has the ability to regulate commerce between states and within states. Okay, what's commerce? Anything, any type of exchange of any activity between two people, that's commerce. So Congress has the ability to regulate that. Okay, what does that mean? Like, what type of commerce do they have the ability to regulate? Do you want to give
I
that
think we
much
should go back to
power?
the sexual intercourse definition. We
E-
should just do that. That'll fix
exactly.
everything.
That's, well, I mean, no, no, no. You're regulating that. So does that give Congress the ability to regulate, you know, what you're allowed to have, sexual relations with? Does it give
Yeah.
Congress the ability to say who you can or cannot have? Or, I mean, I'm pretty sure that's an overstepping of power. And my whole thing is I don't want, and I think that we kind of agree on this. I don't want more regulation from the perspective of regulating anything and everything that can be done. I want mindful regulation that benefits everyone. And then it needs to go down to the states for other things.
Yeah.
I
But
don't think
how do
that,
you write that into a constitution though? Like
right.
mindful regulation?
Okay.
Because what it yeah.
What is
Like
mindful regulation?
but yeah, because I want the same thing. It's like less regulation, but also regulation that matters and means something to everyone, and that makes things better for everyone.
Correct. Yes, I want regulation on what we're putting into the air.
Yeah.
I want regulation of what we're putting back into the environment. Yes, there
Yeah.
should be regulations on that. People shouldn't just be able to dump whatever slop they want wherever they want to dump it, bury it wherever they want to bury it, or put it into the air wherever they want to put it into the air, because that affects everybody.
Yeah.
Not even just localized. It doesn't, just because, oh well, the city around everybody got, has high rates of cancer because there's a plant that's putting smoke into the air and everybody's breathing this. It doesn't just affect that city. That goes all over the place.
Well, and
Whether it metastasizes within the plants and then goes into the ground, goes into the water, goes wherever it's going, it's bad for everybody. So yes, there should be regulations on what people should be able to put into the air, or the environment in general, the environment as a whole. Um, yes, there should be, but from that perspective, what is regulated? Just like microplastics is a big thing. You know, Research has found that everybody has microplastics in them now.
yeah,
They
or like
basically,
GMOs in food.
yeah, it basically exists everywhere. We don't have a way to get rid of that. It,
Lucky us.
yeah, right. Um, and that's one of the things. It's like, okay, well, this was done over a period of years to where it's just now a part of us. And there should be there a regulation on where that stuff comes from, how it gets into our environment, what it's put in, how it's in our food, the containers that we use, all of that type of stuff. It's one of those things of, you can get microplastics from the bowls that you're using to eat out of, or to mix food or cook. You could,
Or yeah, or the Teflon that's covered, that's covered in your frying pan, or that
exactly.
your frying pan is covered in.
So, where does that regulation stop? It's a big, that's a big problem. But mindful regulation across the board. Hey, we've determined that this is bad. Whatever. There's studies that have been done. There's whatever. So we are not going to, we're not going to allow that in our country anymore. Asbestos. Ugh. Oh, what do you know? Asbestos is bad. Hey, they used to have it on cigarette filters. Let's kill them people faster.
Made them taste delicious though.
Yeah, exactly. I put a little roughage
Yeah.
in my body. But no, it's one of those things to where it obviously needs to happen, and there's a process for that to happen. but we need, Congress needs to be able to do that for the good of the people.
Yeah,
But
agreed.
how do you get that? How do you, to regulate commerce? The whole point was because the states were trying to regulate within themselves and protect themselves. Instead of protecting the states protecting themselves, we need to protect the country as a whole, not just the states.
Yeah.
So I think that there needs to be said something about within the state, but, for the simple fact of slavery is the biggest thing you could say, but it
Well,
shouldn't
and
be.
I think you can equate that to the environment example you use. It's like obviously from a moral perspective, it feels like they don't equate, but from the idea that a state can affect every you know everyone else around them, that for that simple fact, then yeah, it should be a Congress should have the ability to regulate that because it has an effect outside of that state.
Yeah, but if you does it have an effect outside the state?
The
Slavery?
environment does, and I think slavery does too, just from the morality of it. Because where do the slaves come from? What if one person crosses into another state and they just decide, oh hey, you're going to be a slave, or uh, that's the only example I can come up with right this second. Um, Trying to think of something else. So yeah, I think it.
I, I think the way that you can do that is put something about the good of humanity, or affecting another person,
Yeah,
or something like the libertarian view. Your rights extend only insofar that it doesn't infringe on mine,
yeah. And slavery does infringe on
infringe on other people's
rights
rights. Yeah,
on other people's rights. Yeah, I think that's a good way. I mean, and I think the question you asked about like, okay, so how do we do this in a way that creates mindful regulation, but doesn't allow the federal government to overstep its bounds? I think that's a great question. You know I don't I can't answer it, but and I'm wondering if that's a good spot to wrap up because I gotta study for
yeah.
finals.
No, I'm right there with you.
Hey,
I'm
and then maybe we come back with ideas in 2 weeks. Hopefully, we'll have it all
Yeah.
figured out at that point.
Oh
I'm gonna
yeah, we'll
ask
have the whole
ChatGPT.
thing.
It's usually good at that stuff.
Yeah, I think that is um, one of the things from the perspective of that the commerce is a big one. I mean, I don't think that, when we're talking about to coin money or to provide for the punishment of counterfeiting securities, a coin or currency, I don't think we're going to get too much. I don't think there's too much to talk about in that. But when you're talking, like, these are big ones, like these first ones are big. Collect taxes, spend money, and
I
commerce.
think coining money is a big one too, man, because that is a huge lever of power, man. Especially when you
Exactly.
talk about fiat currency and now you're talking and now we have crypto and what that's kind of done and the effects it's had and where it's going and what it could be and what it might not be. There's a lot to unpack there too.
We're gonna have a good time. That's all I know. I love talking about this stuff because it really kind of brings certain things to light, and understanding how we've progressed in the past 200 and almost 50 years, and what we've done to try to overcome some of those things, and the way that things have been interpreted, from the standpoint of the people that founded the country, and why they worded things the way that they did. Maybe not fully understanding the. I think in order to get all of the states on board, they had to keep it almost vague enough to where it wasn't specific to where people could pick that apart, if that made sense. Like, you had to, all 13 states had to agree to this, so they had to make it vague enough but powerful enough to where it made sense for them all to work together. So,
Yeah, they were walking a fine line for sure. I know for me, the more we do this and the more we delve into it, it's like I really wish I could go back and ask them some questions, you know?
Just
Like,
being a fly on a wall. Yeah, just to hear what
yeah,
they're the way that they're talking about stuff. Yeah. Oh, I'm right there with you. It's definitely something. So, but okay, so we're going to call it for today.
yeah,
I think that I think we made some progress. Maybe got off on a couple tangents there, but
always do, man.
always do.
We
It's kind of hard not
we
to.
need a moderator. That's what we need.
Moderator. Oh, let's add another person in here. We can do that. That's definitely not going to cause any problems.
No,
Um, no,
no
we'll
issues there.
exactly. But no. Thanks for joining me again today, Josh. Thanks to everyone out there
Yeah.
who's been
Hey,
watching our stuff
yeah.
and supporting us.
I'm
We appreciate it.
I'm happy. Yeah, I'm happy to do it, and you know, I always enjoy our conversations, and I'm hoping someday some good, some positivity will come come through this. Um,
Definitely,
the
definitely.
the effort is worth the endeavor. Uh, yeah,
Without a doubt. We'll there's everybody can affect change. We just have to do it in our own way, and I think that this is a big part. Going through this, it kind of exposing this knowledge and getting this out to the public for them to think about,
yeah,
which is what we
absolutely.
want. So, all right, Josh. Again, no stream next week. We will be taking next week off, but the 28th, I believe, is the next one. The 28th, yep, on a Sunday, right before New Year's, after Christmas. We will see you then.
Yeah. All right, everybody, be safe and make good choices.
Take care of yourself. Take care of each other. Bye.